We now have confirmation that conservative commentator and Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk has been pronounced dead after being shot while speaking today at a Utah event. This was clearly an act of political violence. And while voices across the political spectrum are condemning it, I have already seen some conservative commentators trying to blame Democrats and demanding that Democrats prove they oppose violence. That is unfair and disingenuous. Democrats have spoken out against political violence consistently, and they are the ones who have pushed for the very reforms that could have helped prevent tragedies like this one. Let me be very clear. This was a tragedy. No matter what you think of Charlie Kirk or his political views, no one should face violence. I disagree with him on just about everything, but that does not mean I believe in, support, or excuse political violence. And I should not have to prove that, because Democrats and progressives have always condemned violence. The same cannot be said for many on the right. We all remember how the attack on Paul Pelosi was mocked relentlessly. Even the current president and his son made light of it online. We saw jokes about serious injuries and even memes of political figures in demeaning violent situations. When rhetoric dehumanizes opponents, when you call them enemies of the state, or insist that your rivals have no dignity or value as people, the outcome is predictable. Tragedies like this are the result. So no, the responsibility for condemning violence should not rest on Democrats alone. And yes, some will accuse me of politicizing this, but I strongly disagree. The only way to prevent these things from happening again is to be honest about the causes. That includes addressing the epidemic of gun violence in America, which is claiming lives every single day, often with little or no media coverage unless the incident is especially large or involves a well-known figure. It's heartbreaking that we've become so numb to it. Right now, as I speak, there are reports of another school shooting in Denver. The fact that we can name multiple tragedies in the same breath shows how routine this has become. That is unacceptable. I also think it's important to note what Laura Loomer tweeted earlier, that Charlie Kirk, at the time of this event, was reportedly discussing transgender Americans. Recently, we've seen a narrative pushed on the right that unfairly blames transgender people for violence. Some have even suggested stripping them of constitutional rights, while at the same time refusing any form of common-sense gun safety reform that could protect everyone. That double standard is obvious. Remember Pizzagate, when conspiracy theories about Hillary Clinton and a pizza parlor drove someone to commit a dangerous act. That wasn't long ago. And yet now, when questions are raised about Donald Trump's past associations with notorious figures, we're told to ignore it, deny it, or call it fake. That is the hypocrisy. If I've strayed from the specific topic of Charlie Kirk, I understand why some viewers may feel that way. But I think it's important to connect the dots, to talk about the culture that creates these moments. Billionaires and powerful lobbies profit from division and distraction. They want us fighting each other instead of coming together to demand solutions. Weapons of war should not be on our streets, yet they are, and they're now being carried by government forces in ways that intimidate communities instead of protecting them. Meanwhile, everyday families continue to lose loved ones, and political leaders distract us with culture wars rather than solutions. This is not a left versus right issue. I know gun owners personally who treat firearms with seriousness, care, and respect. Many of them support common sense safety reforms. It is simply not true that every gun owner in America opposes reform. That's a myth pushed by lobbyists to keep people divided and to prevent progress. That's why this conversation must happen. We must talk about political violence. We must talk about gun violence. And we must reject the idea that offering only thoughts and prayers is enough. Community and faith matter, but they are not substitutes for action. If thoughts and prayers were enough, we wouldn't see leaders sending militarized police into cities while dismissing reform as impossible. We need to recognize that political actors have deliberately undermined progress, protecting a status quo that benefits elites while leaving ordinary people vulnerable. That is why I keep repeating this point. Violence is not just a tragedy. It is a symptom of deeper problems in our politics, our economy, and our media environment. So yes, I will say it again. I condemn political violence. I always have. But I refuse to accept the framing that Democrats or progressives need to be asked again and again to prove it, while others continue to fuel and normalize it. That question itself, do you condemn, is often a distraction, a way to shift blame, and a roadblock to real change. If leaders truly wanted to act, they could. If Donald Trump wanted to, he could pressure his allies in Congress tomorrow to pass sweeping reforms. But he won't. Because for too many in power, profit and politics matter more than lives. That is the reality. And while I know some may criticize me for tying these threads together, I believe it's necessary. We can't just cover each tragedy in isolation without looking at the system that allows them to happen again and again. So once more, yes, this was a tragedy. Yes, I condemn it. But more importantly, I call for action. Because if we don't act, we already know how this story ends, and that is not acceptable. I'll keep updating this story as more information becomes available. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next update.